All right, this is from the Balance of Power first round. It is Dalamar versus Villalva. We got a three squares board with some elemental. What's the rules? Plus plus wall. Got to keep in mind no same. I like that Dalamar used up a card that, obviously having four as a free spot is very good for first turn. And Dalamar jumped to use it. I like that he used one of his three visible cards. I think my instinct would have been to use one of the other two because they are more redundant. But this is without having looked yet at Vialva's hand. It's interesting. There's no random, so you get to choose which cards are visible. Oh, that's a whole very interesting wrinkle. I haven't thought about that at all. Like, which cards do you want to show? Villalva has gone with showing these opposite 6-7-5-4s and a 5-6-7-0, which really makes you think he's got something like if a 7-0-5-6 is available, you have to assume that's in his remaining cards. And there could be some good bluffs there. Villalva also gets a card out of his hand he wants out. But this is interesting because if you look at Villalva's cards, then I think it's pretty clear the 7-2-6-4 should have pretty good play. So maybe the 6-2-6-3 and 4? But it's hard to tell, and it really depends on what's in the rest of Dalamar's hand. Now, three slots. I won't really get into why. Let's be honest, because I don't fully understand. But three slots tends to favor first turn, and having the free square certainly does. So, how would you push for advantage here if you're Dalamar? The 6-7-5-4 gives really good coverage of 2 from 1, and unless you have the combo back, it means you really can't go in 2. I think there's some appeal to going in 9. That's a square you can potentially set up some synergies. Not obvious you have a card for that, but if 6-2-6-3 fits in 9, that would be nice to do. If you have really good coverage of 2, maybe you could just capture in 10, but I'm skeptical of that. I think it's time for 6-2-6-3 to leave the hand. An interesting move I haven't really considered in my own games would be to play something like 6-2-6-3 and 1. If you have a nice recapture in 5, just give them 2, you get 5, you get 1, and they're going to start having to put things on the board you can attack more directly. Another interesting idea is just go in 5. Maybe that's the right way to do this. Go in 5, say 6-2-6-3. I'm not sure you have great takebacks, but just say anytime you go in 1 or 2, I go in the other one. I might be able to capture you, and then you're in huge trouble. But even if I can't, you don't know that. It becomes really risky for you to occupy those squares. That might be a nice way to split the board into these two squares you control. Now, I'm not sure Dalamar is the right cards to do that, so I'm not sure how good an idea it is. But if he has, because the problem is if 6-2-6-3 and 5 can be comboed from 9, then suddenly it can be harder to play in 1 or 2. Like, you really don't want to use either of the cards you have showing in 1 or 2 because they lead to combo potential against you. But you also don't want to keep them in your hand because A, they are visible, and B, they are not cards that are very good at going into 1 or 2 themselves. So I think 5 is what you want to do, but maybe you just don't have the cards. Or at least it's one thing you might want to do. The more I look at it, the less I like going in 9. I think probably don't have the cards, and I'm not sure what impact it has. Okay, he does go 9. Now, given the cards we've seen, I did just sound a little negative towards it, but I also wasn't finding another path I liked. And I really wanted something that used up one of the two visible cards. And as long as Dalamar has 5, this should be generally pretty good. It's also not obvious Dalamar has a capture in 13. That has some risk, right? Like, I think Villalva It's not necessarily Villalva does either. He probably has a 7 up, but a 7 is not guaranteed that capture. Interesting. The other thing to note is with these 6, 7, 5, 4s visible, it's a level 3 and 5. Clearly, some level 3s required, some level 5s required. Now, Villalva had 2 level 5s visible, where Dalamar, I think, 7, 2, 6, 4, I think of as a level 4, so that could be 3 or 5. All right, we saw some quick moves. Villalva goes in 1, taking the combos, and Dalamar gets rid of his last hidden visible card in the obvious square in 2. I mean, this looks very good for Dalamar, though I think it's a tough random for not a tough random, but a random distribution of blocks for Villalva. But if you're Dalamar here, you've successfully gotten rid of all 3 of your cards. And if you have something useful to do, you are down. No, it's even 6-6. You each have 2 safe cards, but you have the turn to attack. You have last turn. Maybe Villalva's handled this really well, because this is definitely not near as bad as it could be. And there's a good chance Dalamar does not have a lot of up power remaining, right? 2 of his visible cards, I mean, the 3 cards he's shown have had a 7, 6, 5 facing up. Facing to the right, it's 7, 2, 2. Facing to the left, it's 4, 4, 3. Facing down, it's 6, 6, 1. It is clear he is, or very likely, he has shown most of his up power and a decent amount of his down power. Still has a lot of left, still has some right, and maybe the game will be left right, but it's tricky. Okay. The -1 means that combo's extra. Now, Dal is susceptible to combos here, but there is potential to combo back, right? It's not even clear, like, there could be plus walls in 11. Man, it's hard to commentate when you can't see the cards, and also when I don't have a good feel for closed. But Villalva only has 1 card left that's hidden, right? If Villalva uses that card, it becomes obvious he has no threats. So I think Villalva kind of has to find a way to use one of his visible cards and create a threat. This was well set up by Dalamar. I think his move in 9 was good, presuming he had 5. But this has turned out very well for him, because this seems really difficult. Now, let's assume Villalva has something in either 11 or 13 or 14. Then you kind of gotta start playing on diagonals. Like, I would expect a move in 15, and we get a move in 15, right? You gotta try to say, you don't know which I have. If you're Dalamar, you have 2 hidden cards. I think you just play in 16. You're up 8-4. If they capture 16, you win anyway. The worst thing that can happen, if they go in 13, that only, even if they combo, that only flips 2 cards. It's 6-6. As long as you can capture 6, 7, 5, 4, you win. And if they go in 14, that's the only move that can capture 3 cards. You're down 7-5. So if you hold on to a card that can capture back in 13, if you have that, but we should assume you do. You did play in 9. And can capture 6, 7, 5, 4, you win on the spot by going in 16. Now, I don't know if he has those cards. That is not obvious. That's not trivial to have. But it does seem pretty appealing, because you have a really big lead on board. And when you have a really big lead on board, you can often just play away from the action. I think this was a really tough spot for Villalva. He's facing 3 blocks is known to be very good for first turn. This was a 3-block situation that was particularly good for first turn. And Dalamar set up the combos nicely. So how do you deal with that? And he didn't have good ways to get rid of his visible cards. I'm not sure he picked the right cards in the order for his hand, choosing what would be visible and what would be hidden. Because it seems like his better cards were mostly visible rather than hidden. Dalamar does play 16. Can't complain about this move. It is exactly what I wanted. And now we see what Villalva's last card is. And he basically needs. I think if he has 14, he should play 14. Maybe Dalamar has 11, but there's nothing you can do about that. I think you play 13, and you're just making it 6/6, even if you have the combo, which we don't know if he does. Oh, there's no same. Oh, that's brutal. Yeah, that's really rough. I would have forgotten that too. I think that was the best try in the position. You go for 14. It just happened to not be a thing here. So Villalva goes out in round one of Balance of Power. Congrats to Dalamar. I think a really well played win. I think if you're Villalva, you can reasonably say this board was horrendous for me, and I forgot same was on, which is was not on, which is just going to happen. This was just a really tough spot for Villalva, but I think Dalamar dealt with it clinically. I think the move in 16 is really precise. With the setups we now see, I'm hoping the last card we see. Yep, it was set up well to go in 5. It didn't give the combo back in 13, but was guaranteed a capture of 14. Yeah, I think there was very little Villalva could do here because Dalamar had the board advantage and first turn advantage and executed it very nicely. So I think both players should actually feel fine about this game. I think maybe I liked that Dalamar got rid of his visible cards as quickly as possible. Yeah, tough game. All right, congrats to Dalamar here. Nicely played win. And I always get confused that it doesn't say like game over, but I think it just doesn't on TTA either. I just in my brain think it does. When you're watching, it doesn't pop up with that. All right. Hope you enjoyed this Triple Triad Network game.